But
like I've said before, this thing, like I'm getting into this, but honestly, what's happening right now, the Roe v. Wade, the situation, it is not. First of all, even if it happens, it's not going to take place till June, but it's not affecting anyone's right to an abortion or anything. If that,
correct.
I hesitate to call it that, but
Yeah.
it just makes it a states' rights thing. You know, that's all that's happening here. But to get into the conversation, like, you have to be able, if you're gonna take any stance like this, you have to say, you have to be able to decide like when that person becomes a person, right? From your view, when are you going to decide when the baby is granted personhood? So many times
Mm,
it's just a clump of cells, it's just something it's a parasite or whatever in the
sure,
womb.
sure.
The
Mhm.
woman, it's the woman's body. What about when there's two heartbeats? What does that make the
Correct.
woman? There's like when the heartbeat is detected as I don't know exactly how as early, um, but
I
there's
believe it's 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like you have to be able to, like, what do you say to that? There's a lot of different arguments as far as like, as long as they can be sustainable outside of the womb, and then you're just talking about where they are, right? So you gave
Yeah.
me great
Yeah. Yeah.
resources that I'll kind of try to list down, and you can probably help me out through this argument if I don't make it super well. But the basic
Okay.
acronym that James has given me, which from some person that he talked about, I don't know,
Yes, Scott Klugendorf.
Scott Klugendorf. It's SLED, right? So it's the size of
Acronym.
the person, the level of dependency of the person, right? The environment, or
Mm-hmm.
right, the environment, and
Yeah.
then
And
uh, dependency,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
So
it's
we have size, yeah, size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. So those four, um, just even one of them really, they can be used as arguments, but they're scientific facts as well to consider when it comes to the topic of abortion. And what I love about Scott Klusendorf is that although he is an evangelical Christian, he is devout. He doesn't use the Bible to argue why killing a baby in the womb is wrong.
yeah,
Which I think is very unique. But he thinks it's important that we Christians know how to argue from a scientific standpoint. So, we know, for example, Shaquille O'Neal is bigger than most of us. You know, most of us even probably watching this. But just because he's bigger doesn't mean that he's more important, and just because we're smaller than him doesn't mean that we're less important. And so that's the rationale for people who think it's okay to sometimes kill a baby in the womb. It's like,
yeah.
well,
It's literally
this
because the
baby is,
person is smaller. You know,
yeah,
just
yeah,
because they're
yeah,
smaller
which
doesn't
doesn't
give
make
them make them any less of a person. You know.
correct, correct. They have all the facilities, all the faculties of a whole human being, just like anyone else. Now they're less developed, but a 5-year old is less developed than a 15-year old.
Yep.
You know, yeah. So it doesn't make sense. You
And
know.
that's the biggest argument is like where you draw the line. Where do you consider that baby becoming a person? Where do you consider that child becoming a person? That woman becoming a person? Right? You're so
Mm.
everyone's so upset about women's rights and everything, but what about the women that are in the womb? And
Thank
the
you,
and the
thank you.
men that are in the womb for that matter. Equal rights
Hmm.
and everything,
Hmm.
right? I saw a tweet
Yes.
that was really said the biggest like equal rights issue is not pay gap or the wage that you make. It's the ability that to choose life or not. You know, women exclusively
Mm.
have the right to determine that with abortion, they exclusively have the right to determine life or death. That's the
Mm.
biggest wage. That's the biggest disparity between the equality of the sexes. When you use abortion as a right,
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so with all of that, yeah, let's keep going down the list. So it's we got talked about size, right? Size, you can't
Yeah.
determine the value of a person through that. Level of development, you can't determine the value of a
Yeah.
person through that. You're saying a kid is not a person as someone that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
older,
Let's say we
fully
had a
developed.
5-year-old girl. She obviously is less developed than a 35-year-old. 5-year-old doesn't have reproductive organs that have already ready to, give birth, but 35-year-old can, and so she's less developed, so it really doesn't make sense when even a toddler, compared to someone that's older, like one is less development doesn't mean that we have the right to kill them.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, there's yeah, it's just when a person is challenged with these arguments to really try to be consistent, it's hard to really kind of I don't know, have some integrity with this sort of discussion when you walk it out these scenarios all the way out, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just
S-
yeah, but it's the same concept,
So the
you know, with
next one
2 year old.
is environment. You know, people will say, "Oh, they're
Right.
still in the womb. They don't count as a person. Once they're out of the womb, they do count as a person." That
Yeah,
shouldn't
yeah,
matter where you stand, your personhood, you know, like at all. That has no relevance to you being a person.
right,
That your
right.
physical
You nailed it.
location.
You
And
nailed it. You nailed it.
yeah,
You
no,
nailed it.
it's a good list here. And then the last one is degree of dependency, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So they say because it's in the womb, it can't be self-sustainable. Well, what do you mean to that? You know, infant child is not self-sustainable. You know, they need the mother's attention and care for years before they're able to, I guess, take care of themselves. And to extend from that, what about people that are mentally ill or have a heart defect or a brain defect or anything
There
like
you go.
that? You know, we're saying people that are maybe special needs or they need extra care that they're not worthy of
Correct.
personhood.
Correct.
You know, you get into a lot of
Correct.
dangerous territory when you make those assumptions.
Yes. Yes, Tim. You nailed it, man. You nailed it. You nailed it. So it's really difficult to argue that when you have like so many examples of people on respiratory systems that, you know, they need assistance with breathing, or they need help with medication, or they need help to be cleaned or changed, or exchanged organs and all these different things. So it's like it's very difficult to be consistent with something like this when, yeah, it's and we don't have the right to kill any of these people just because they need help,
That's
you
the
know.
biggest point. You can't just look at a kid because you're the mom and just decide then, right, that you can just kill them. But you can do that if they're in the womb, right? That doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and I've talked about this before, and I might have said it already, but the point of the reason why these two groups, pro-life and pro-choice, can't come to any fundamental understanding is because we fundamentally disagree on what is a life and what is not. And
I would agree.
the pro-choice side always tries to avoid the argument of like where do you determine when a person is a human, and you can pull out the charts on people. You know, the charts are very disturbing too, like having people actually point like, okay, that's a
Oh
human
yeah, yeah,
right
yeah.
there. It's like, how
I've
do
seen
you,
that. I've seen that.
you
Yeah.
know? And then there's you know, we don't even have to get into it, but there's so much material, so much like awful, you know, visuals, and when you actually see this process being taken place, it's horrific. You know, that's all. That's the only word that
Mm.
can describe it. Is horrific, and